don't think I've missed any one of these Appalachian Grazing Conference. And, and that's been 10 years now. In 2003 we started this, and I had the pleasure of helping put some of these programs together, working with Barbara and organizing speakers, and this has always been a good conference. Years and years ago we started with the Great Lakes Grazing Conference, and then we started a Heart of America Grazing Conference. Gary Lacefield's part of that process, and being part of this one. So these have been great events to get you started to think about grazing. And they charged me with the topic of talking about stockpile grazing. Someone go to dim the lights, or are they working on that? I was stalling. Stockpiled tall fescue in the back of the room, and I'm going to dovetail real good into the presentation's already done. Gary's talked about stockpile, and there's some more of these in the back of the room. If you didn't pick one up, make sure you get one, because this is what we're talking about, how we can use it. We talk about stockpiling, so we all understand what we're talking about is accumulating forage during the growing season and using it in the dormant season. So in this case, we're growing grass in the fall, and we're going to graze it right now. I do this myself. My ewes are still grazing today. Okay, I have a good wife. She's out moving fence, Bill. Okay, we're feeding 120 ewes. We will start lambing for about another 6 weeks. So they're out grazing stockpiled tall fescue and some annuals as well. So we'll talk about that. We can grow a lot of grass in the fall if we manage it right. From a ton to 4 tons. The content, it's pretty good feed too. When we talk about this in Ohio to my producers, sometimes the fall grass that we're grazing right now is better than the hay they could be eating. Think about that. If you haven't tested your round bales of hay that you baled last spring, what kind of quality is it that you're feeding to those cows? So we can really think it does lose some over winter, and we'll talk about those things. Why are we talking about it? Because grazing is the most inexpensive way to feed your animals. And I don't care what season of the year, spring, summer, fall, or winter, if you have those cows out harvesting their own feed, working for you, and not you working for them, you're going to make more money. Think about that. Stockpile fits into that system when nothing else is growing. Yeah, we can graze crop residues. Being from Ohio, we're considered a corn belt state. We could feed all our cows on just the fodder that's out there in those cornfields. Not just all the cows in Ohio. We're talking about all the cows in the United States. Okay? The problem with corn fodder, it's only good, or in the field, for about 60 days after the combine gets through it. We can grow winter annuals, but this time of the year is probably the worst time for winter annuals because they're not actively growing either, and haven't accumulated a whole lot, but that stockpiled feed is still there and going, even into January. You can see what the hell they're doing. But when we start looking at it, we've got to select the right field as we're looking at it. And lots of pastures can be worked in the stockpiled program. Tall fescue, bluegrass, orchard grass, timothy, they all can work, but by far the best one is tall fescue. It has characteristics. Gary touched on some of these. Cool season grass, highly nutritious if we look at the test numbers. Has some other issues with it though. Has that fungus in it. We'll talk about how we can utilize and work with this or around that fungus. But this is where we're at. Gary mentioned this. Fescue can grow in about anywhere. And we're in that northern range of the adapted where we're predominant. It's out there. Use it to our advantage. Why? Because it stockpiles well. It has a sod, tight sod that holds the earth together. So we don't have much erosion, and it's persistent. It will last. You can abuse it and it'll come back. So it'll be there for us. Now, there are some disadvantages. Some of those health problems with that endophyte and how we can work. We'll talk a little bit about that. That spreads into the poor animal performance. You all understand fescue will spread. Okay? If we don't manage our land, you can grow fescue because it'll grow about anywhere. So think about it. There are some new things we can talk about. Endophyte-free cultivars. There's several new types of endophyte-free, and also the novel types and the soft leaf fescues. All these are tall fescues, same genus species. They can all work for stockpiling, some better than others. Gary talked about a little bit this, so this is a graph of showing how that fungus dissipates. Make sure I get the right. Nope, went the wrong way. What'd I do? I'm fine. Technical difficulties. Good. All right. Back up one more. Oh, we both backed up, huh? So if we look at an early, which one? Hitting the wrong one. Right there. So, okay. Yeah, it's easy for you to say with no glasses. I can use this one. If you haven't bought your stick yet, they're still for sale, and the hats too. But I can talk with a stick better, physical. But early mid-December, see where the ergoflavins, and that's the problem we have with it. And as we get through the winter, it just keeps going down and down. So the level gets less and less. Your fescue is going to be the best time to graze it's right now in terms of the endophyte levels that your animals will be getting. So are you grazing, or are you feeding that hay that has the highest level because you cut it when the seed heads were out? You answered to yourselves. You don't have to share that with me. Talk about the quality. When are the sugars the highest? And we've talked about that in terms of the energy. Protein's never a problem. We heard that this week or this weekend. It's the energy. Fescue has one of the highest sugar levels, we call them non-structural carbohydrates, of any of those cool season grasses. But it's in the fall of the year. Are we utilizing it? What did you do in the summer so you couldn't grow grass in the fall? Think about in terms of the protein content, more than adequate. The digestibility, the TDN, if you will, 74. Kathy, I was over with Kathy Sauter's presentation. I can put fat on my lambs with this kind of feed in the fall of the year. Holds true. This is a slide I borrowed from Ed over in Illinois. For you things, the protein holds high through the winter months into the December, as well as the TDN, still above 60% there. Makes good feed. It's more than adequate for dry beef cows. Early in the winter, it could be even good enough to grow animals. Maybe not to finish them, but at least to put weight on them. Think about that. The E plus is fescue with the endophyte in it. So it's endophyte infected. When you see that, it sure makes typing slides easier if you don't have to type all endophyte. So E minus is a tall fescue without the endophyte in it, okay? And E plus plus is tall fescue with a novel endophyte in it. So I explained my slides to you. So think about it in terms of how we can use it. If your farm has endophyte tall fescue, why, oh why, aren't you a wintertime grazer? You should be feeding hay, if you're going to feed hay, in the summer months and graze in the winter. That's the resource you have. And you keep fighting it all the time, trying to get those cows to graze a toxic plant in the summertime and hurt that plant and abuse it so it won't grow in the fall when you could grow your best feed. Doesn't make sense to me. We'll talk about some of those things. Sod base withstands the trampling, which is what we could get on a day like today. Okay? But that doesn't bother me, because I don't mind trampling up my fescue, because it gives an opportunity for me to introduce new plants into that stand. What was this morning? If you didn't get out early, I think Greg Kiss this morning talked about that, and I remember Greg when he was just a wee pup of a soil con in Ohio. So. But think about, this morning been a great morning to do frost seedings. We still have an opportunity to do frost seedings, and we can do that. The decisions we need to talk about now is when do you start this process of growing stockpile and how we're going to manage it with fertility and what we need to do. It's the length of rest we need to talk about. I'm sorry if I ignore this part of the room. I'll have to work on this side a little bit. Huh? Think about that. When do we need and how much rest do we need to start with? We need a maximum of 60 to 75 days. So think backwards of when you're going to start your fall grazing or start grazing and work backward from that. The less rest we give it, the higher the quality is going to be. So if I start grazing at 55 days, it's going to be higher quality than if I start at 80 days. Thinking of your animals. If you're a spring calving cow herd and you want to precondition some calves, this might be a good way to do that. Or if I'm just going to be grazing my cows, I want as much volume as I can get. Quality isn't quite the concern to me. So we can manage some of this. You need to make some decisions. For most of you, who makes the decisions on your pasture fields? The cow. Hopefully it's the boss cow. At least she might be the smartest one of the bunch. If nothing else, she's the most dominant one of the bunch. Okay, we never argue with a dominant female, guys, right? All right. But think about, you need to take charge of what's going on out there. This chart just shows that 65 days, we start getting our highest levels in there. Yes, digestibility goes down. That's the blue chart going downwards. Sward condition. What's it need to look like when we start? The condition of the sward, those plants. And we want to have those plants at least 3 inches tall. So we want to go in there and harvest or clip or graze and take it down. We don't want to start with 10-inch, 8-inch tall material to start stockpiling because those leaves are already 6 to 8 weeks old. So we want to take it down and start all over and get new growth. We want new growth in 60 to 75 days. Understand that? You can't start with an old field. You want to start with something that's been harvested once. So when you start, this chart just talks about some of those things. This is work we've done. I didn't have the date. One of these has a date. 1983, Gary. How many years has that been? 30 years ago. We were working on this. And still, not all of you are doing this. After talking and writing and presenting stuff about stockpiling tall fescue, starting July, you can see what we can get. The quality isn't quite as good, but compared to the middle of August. This is without nitrogen. We'll talk about when you add nitrogen and some of the different management. So we want to start in August if we're looking for volume or quality, I should say. The earlier you start, the better. Now let's talk about, in order to get growth, we also have to have, these are grasses, so they're nitrogen deficient. We've got to supply nitrogen. What's your source of nitrogen? It can come in 3 different forms. We can grow it with legumes. We can apply that manure from last winter, from your last winter feeding, or we can buy commercial fertilizer. The best time to spread manure is in August and September. When are you spreading your manure? Probably as soon as you get enough of it, you can get it out of the way. So let's think about it. If we're spreading it, what we get, again, Ohio data done in Jackson, Ohio, no end, we could grow almost 2,300 pounds of tall fescue starting in August. If we spread that August 20th, we spread 46 and 92. Look at the production. Over 3,700 pounds. We were growing just under or over 20 pounds of forage for every 1 pound of nitrogen. See, in August, It paid to put that additional 46 pounds. You know why we use 46, right? This is your fertility question for the day. Yeah, this is urea. It's 100 pounds of urea. You know, these are PhDers, so you got to keep it easy for them, okay? Think about it. So we got it. We put that on in August. We could grow almost over 2 tons of feed. And it paid. That additional 800 pounds for that 40, it's still 20 pounds. But we didn't get that if you waited to September to put it on. Take home point, it doesn't pay to spread extra nitrogen on in September. That extra 46 pounds in September 24th only made us additional 300 pounds of grass. It wasn't a very good investment. Okay. May have been back there when nitrogen only cost us 10 cents a pound. What's nitrogen cost you today? Urea or ammonia nitrate or ammonia sulfate. Cost me about 65 cents a pound to spread it on my fields. This is some stuff out of Kentucky, similar. This is in 1976, a little older. I put this in here because I knew Dr. Lacefield would be in the crowd, and I want to show him that Ohio could grow more fescue per acre than Kentucky could, okay? You got new data now. I noticed your name wasn't on the bottom of this, so I thought I was safe, okay? But think about what we could do here in terms of, but even there, they were growing 2 tons with 90 pounds. Now, notice when they put it on in August, they were measuring in February, we were measuring in November. So they had probably some wintertime loss with this study as well. So you got to look at the whole picture when we're looking at the numbers on this. But notice the trends. We can always grow more grass with the nitrogen. And that's the point I want to, and the quality's better as well. Again, some more work out of Illinois. They are up there growing lots of forage. And we can grow grass into December. I told the group earlier, one of the things I do on my farm is measure my forage production. I'm out measuring my grass every day the grass is growing, at least on a weekly basis. So I wait to April, sometimes last year it was March when the grass started growing, and I'm measuring my forage production on my farm. I know how much I'm growing. This one, and I can grow grass into December, most years, in my farm. You guys are south. You should be able to grow grass clear into January. That Mill Tucker there, gosh, he's way south down there, okay? But think about this. The one thing I wanted to point here, these are in pennies. That's a cents. This is dollars. So as you think about this, I said today mine was 65 cents. So my cost per pound of forage was 3 cents, 3¼ cents, 3 pennies and a change, okay? My cost per ton of feed, $65. That's why I'm grazing today and not trying to go out and trying to buy hay, because I can't find any hay for $65 a ton, and certainly nothing that is 18% protein and TDN at 68%. That kind of hay would cost me $250 a ton today at the local hay auction. That's a big savings for me. Quality, this is the quality we can look at in terms of when we put that nitrogen on, the 20th or the 24th of September, August 20th. Again, we're looking at that 100 pounds of urea. Notice the quality, still above 10% into February, but when we're put it on later, the quality stays in the field longer and later. Because what happens to urea in August? It will volatilize unless we can stabilize it. And you can buy products. That's the reason my nitrogen may cost me a little more, because I put agrotane on it, a urease inhibitor that keeps it from breaking down and volatilizing. Gives me about 12 days of additional praying for rain in between time. I have been known to go get the fertilizer when it starts to rain and spread it in the rain, just to make sure it's going to work, because I've also seen it forecast rain and nothing ever happens. But this is what it looks like. 40, 60 pounds of N in August, 14 to 16% crude protein, 65% TDN. Mine has always been a little better than that in terms of TDN. Maybe the fact that my fields aren't completely 100% tall fescue, why mine will test better than that. If you have legumes in your field, you don't have to worry about the price of nitrogen. And by legume, I mean 30% legume. And that's by weight. And one of the things I work with farmers to get them to measure how much is out there, because most of you overestimate the amount of legumes. So if we summarize right now the first steps, start stockpiling is a compromise between early and late. If I want quality, I start early. Or if I want quality, I start late. If I want quantity, I start early. So it goes back to what I'm wanting to feed. If I'm going to put bloom on lambs, I start early. Try to get as much quality as I can. If it's feed for my dry use, I'm going to put it on early to grow as much as I can. So I can manage, and there's been years I've fertilized and done in 2 different fields or 2 different times. One early, one late, depending on what the targeted use is going to be. Apply it on, but usually before mid-August. 25 pounds of dry matter for every pound of N. 20 is a real good conservative number. If hay is $80 a ton, this is just for easy math, and N costs are 80 cents a pound, it's $1 a pound of forage I grow for every pound. Think about that. I invest in 80 cents and get $1 back. You can do it bigger math. I'll give you $8, you give me a $10 bill back. Good investment. And I get that in less than 6 months turnaround. She didn't want to do that. I don't understand why she wouldn't take me up on that deal. Risk factors. There are some risks. The biggest one is rain. The other one is how you're going to utilize it. And I can take that one away. You can take that off your table too, if you're going to utilize it better and more efficiently. The benefits, reducing my costs, reducing your costs. And the other good benefit, we're spreading manure around. Those of you who are feeding in hay rings, where's all your manure? Yeah, it's real. It's within 100 foot of that bale ring. I'm moving a fence, and we're spreading the manure uniformly all winter long. And we're getting better distribution of that manure. You know, manure never stinks coming out of the back of the animal. You take your spreader out of the barn and start hauling manure, your neighbors will notice that, okay? For my neck of the woods, that's a big difference. When we bought our farm 32 years ago, I could stand on my front porch and count 4 houses. Today, I stand on my front porch, I can count 36 homes. It's a changing landscape. Maybe not in your world, but it is in mine. Stockpiled forage, if we could meter it out with a temporary fence and get better utilization, is one of those ways we can take that risk away. If you've never done any kind of management intensive grazing or any kind of controlled grazing, this is the easiest time to get experience, because you don't have to worry about a back fence. Not much is growing behind you. You can just start at the water and move away and allow them to eat a little bit. Notice in this slide we have little round bales out there. This guy took off his last cutting in August or July, left it in the field, stockpiled the regrowth, and he's grazing that and left those bales out there. He's grazing the stockpiled fescue along with those little round bales. Okay? This is Earl McCarn.
Earl McCarn?
Yes, I could say you may know him, Earl.
Yeah.
He does this. Okay? What do they eat first? That's right. They'll graze the grass before they get to those round bales. That's the last choice, is those round bales. Strip grazing increases your utilization efficiency. If you just move once every 3 days, you'll get 40% more grazing days than if you move once every 2 weeks. Okay? And probably the funnest chart I've ever developed is this one here for you hay feeders. If you want 80% utilization, it's moving every day, which is what we do. It's like putting hay in a ring feeder every other day. About that, if it 3-day strip is 70% efficient, it's like feeding every 3 days or unrolling a round bale on a daily basis. You get down to the bottom, if you just turn them out in the field, it's like turn them into your hay storage area. Anybody do that? Got your pile of round bales and just open it up and let the cows have free-for-all? But why do we open up a gate and let them have the whole field? It's easier to open up the gate and let them have that whole pile of hay, too. But you never would think of that. We need to think the same way about our pasture field as we do about our stored hay and making it work. Winter grazing is some of the issues we deal with. Sometimes we could do this to help us manage an area if we're going to reseed this. But if this is part of our normal wintering package of management skills, we probably need to think about doing something different. And stockpiling help us renovate some of these issues. We have some serious issues, environmental issues, when we start feeding in one area, sacrificing it, especially if it's close to a stream. And that's what the one on the top left is. That's a stream on the left-hand side there. If you're feeding hay there for 5 months, you got 5 months worth of manure within 2 feet of the stream. Not a good environment. That's where your phosphorus all ends up leaving. In terms of cost and economics, what's your biggest feed cost? Or your biggest cost of operation? Is feeding that mama cow. 63% probably of your annual cost is feed cost. The biggest ticket item is that winter feed. And it's a big range, $100 to $400. If you're at the $100 range, I bet you're making money. If it costs you $400 to feed your cows, I'm beginning to wonder if you're making any money or not. You have to consider, is what you're doing a hobby or not? You may have to justify that to the wife someday when she wants something new in the house. Winter feed cost, the single largest cost of running beef cows. The problem is most farmers have no idea what their hay costs are. What's it cost you a ton to bale hay? Figure the equipment in there, not just your time and fuel, equipment. Think about what your costs are. Legumes can work. Understand that. Understand that when you have legumes in there, they're taking up space where the grass would be growing. So that's why they may not be as productive sometimes. But one of the things I've gone to now is some winter covers, like Austrian winter peas and crimson clover, because they're growing when my tall fescue isn't. But providing some nitrogen back to the system, but they're not taking up space during that fall growing season and utilizing some of that. So if you have grasses or legumes in your tall fescue fields, it's going to provide most of the nitrogen we need. Think about it. We'll get to why it's important. This is 28% clover. If you think you have 30%, this is from my field. 45% tall fescue, 15 Kentucky blue, 10 orchard grass, 18 white clover, 10 red clover, and 2% forb. That 2% is dandelions and chicory. Okay? Chicory I planted, the dandelions came free. Okay? But they're both good forbs. Sheep love them. They'll graze them. And they're nice. This is 54% legume, if you look like that. So understand, you need to get mental pictures of how much legume's out there. Otherwise, you need to clip an area, separate the grass and the clover and weigh it, dry it and weigh it. Understand, clovers always have more water than our grasses do. So we're looking at dry matter weights, not wet weights, as we're thinking how much percentage legumes in that pasture. Why are we worried? Gary, you've seen this slide many times and probably talked about it. The 10 reasons to grow clovers in your pasture field. One of those, it fixes nitrogen. That's the obvious one. Improves forage quality. When we have legumes in there, we have a higher quality product for our animals to graze. Better distribution of growth. When are the clovers and legumes growing? In the summertime. When is our grass growing the least? In the summertime. Helps balance out some of that growth curve problems. Increase forage yield. Reduce risk. Benefits in a crop. Reduced animal toxins. If we want to reduce some of those fescue toxicities, putting red clover, white clover out in those fields tomorrow morning or Monday morning or in the next 10 days can help us to relieve some of those problems. And they just look pretty, if nothing else, especially in the summertime. Look at it. So if we look at it in terms of the nitrogen benefit, that additional red and white clover, 100 to 2 pounder, that white clover, 100 to 150 pounds. Put your nitrogen cost to it. I use 60 cents here just to make math easy and simple for me. You put that. How much does so you want to put 6 pounds of red clover on? How much does a pound of red clover cost you? $3 a pound. 3 times 6 is $18. And it's going to give you back $60 in nitrogen. How long will that red clover last? 2 to 3 years. So if it's 2 years, it costs you how much? Divided by $9, because I get that nitrogen every year. Not just the year I seeded the clover, it's every year. Well, the rhizobia is the ones that are making that nitrogen. Think about this. I don't understand why everybody isn't out buying red clover seed and white clover in your pasture fields. It pays for itself in the first year. More. It's a no-brainer. If you buy the $4 red clover seed, it's going to make more nitrogen because it has a more leaf area. The more leaf area, the more energy it's making. The more energy it makes, it shares it with the rhizobia that are on the roots. And the more energy you have, the more rhizobia you can support, the more nitrogen you're going to make, and the whole system just runs faster and stronger. Why, oh why, aren't you out buying red clover seed? Other things is, make sure it's inoculated. Buy the better inoculation. Make sure it's clover inoculation. Soybean inoculation does nothing to a red clover plant. The rhizobia is species specific, legume species specific. The newer rhizobia are much more efficient than the old. And in your soil, you probably have the old rhizobia. Inoculate your soil, your fields, with some of the new rhizobia. And you'll be even more nitrogen from that red clover. Just get the high sign. All right.
That would even pay for the lime.
That's right.
That's the key. That 60 to 120 bucks pays for the
Clover
clover and for the lime.
I love this guy. It's a no-brainer. That was just on the nitrogen. There's other benefits. Look at the animal performance. A half a pound more on your cows. You know, compare with the clover in your field versus not. Half a pound more on your calves. Or 0.2 of a pound more. Whoops. Did it go? What'd I do now? He really did shut me off. Whoop. Run me down there. He got all excited here. It just one of those touchdowns. There you go. Yield. I do love this one from Kentucky, Gary. Red clover, fescue, 6 pounds. Remember what I used? 5 tons. You don't do anything, 2 tons. What's the average hay yield in Ohio? 2 tons. Because we don't do anything. If you did just anything, put $18 worth of seed on there, look at the difference in yield you'd get. And remember, it's already paid for with the nitrogen you got. So it's a big deal. I missed this one. Conception rates. Those of you in the cow-calf industry, look at the difference in conception rate. Your business is determined on pregnant females. Right? If you have a beef cow and she's not lactating and not pregnant, what value is she to you? How many of those can you sell, Bill? Not very many. They got to be lactating and or pregnant. Preferably, and you like them when they're doing both. Now, I'm a shepherd. I have an animal that's dry, neither pregnant nor lactating, for quite a period of the year. She can work really hard for me cleaning up things. You beef cow guys shouldn't have that kind of situation where you have an open female that's not pregnant. Most of our pregnancy because of nutrition. In terms of, because that's the last thing a female puts her energy into. It's into maintenance, lactating, feeding her baby before she ever thinks about putting energy into that reproductive system. We talked about that one. Easy way to start is in that hay aftermath. If you have a hay field, it'll feed your cows for 30 to 50 days. Just doing nothing. Just put a fence on it. Strip it off. It's an easy way to start. And we can reduce your hay feeding a month. Don't take the last cutting off. Stockpile it and graze it off. This is one from Jim Garish, guy he works with. Annual pastures is another way to look at it. One of the things we use is a lot of oats. Annual ryegrass, rye, cereal rye, oats, wheat, triticale, barley will all work. This is annual ryegrass, high quality feed. Oats will give us the highest fall yield. We plant oats in August and we can graze them all winter long. I've had guys that plant oats after a wheat crop. They'll go out and put their cows out there Thanksgiving weekend, and they'll be moving them off here in a week or two. Some of them even start calving out on those oats, and that's all they get. An acre per cow can grow all they need. Spring yield, the winter annuals will overwinter and give us some growth in the spring. Oats won't do that. This is that oat field we talked about. They're going out, see the fence out in the background there. So we look at some of these things. The annual ryegrass is the easiest to establish. Then we go wheat, rye, oats, triticale, they're all about the same. The hardest thing is barley to try to get established in these systems. Tips on this, if you're going to try this, don't seed too early. Increase your seeding rates. Make sure we got fertility there because these are annuals. And graze them at the desired quality stage. Growing animals need a higher quality than brood animals. Those old brood animals don't. So, you need to have forage in the field, control the grazing, and serve it out to them in pieces. Serve them out to them in pieces at a time. We've eliminated all our haymaking. I have a picture of me with a cutting torch with my last hay baler. Okay. Actually, I got more for iron or steel than what I paid for it initially. So my equipment was never the best. Okay. Well, I couldn't afford the best because we only were feeding 120 ewes. I didn't want to invest more in machinery than what I had in animals. Now we've done away with all that equipment. Of course, the kids are all gone too. And you may have found this, Bill. I thought having daughters that, boy, I'd be short on hay labor. Do you realize those girls could call and they'd have 4 or 5 boys there. And Dad could help sort them out, you know. Some of them never came back. They decided that was too hard to work.
No, Mom, if they come in and the hat's turned to the side, I always tell them to follow the hat back.
Back around the corner, huh? Well, those are the guys that go to the top of the mow. Yeah. You got to have a positive attitude. I hope I gave you a positive attitude today. That was my intent, to make you have some fun. But I want you to leave with that. Do you work to feed your cows? Or do your cows feed you and your family? Who's working for who? And that's what you need to have. Thank you.